My husband married my sister with my life insurance money, so I walked into their wedding from the grave. I fell off a mountain, drowned in a freezing creek, and woke up 6 months later to discover my own husband had buried me, spent my life insurance, and put a ring on my sister's finger. Stay until the end because when I finally walked through those church doors very much alive, I didn't just ruin their wedding. I ended their entire lives as they knew them. Hey everyone. Before we dive into this one, drop the name of your city down in the comments. I love seeing where all of you are tuning in from tonight. Okay, deep breath. Let's get into it because this one still doesn't feel real to me even though I lived every second of it. Rewind 6 months. Back then, my name still meant something normal. I was Loretta Hayes, 34 years old, a real estate agent with a solid book of clients and a reputation for closing deals other agents walked away from. I had a husband named Russell who I would have sworn, on anything you asked me to swear on, loved me completely. We owned a 2-story colonial on a street lined with old oak trees. The kind of neighborhood where your neighbors actually lift a hand off the steering wheel to wave at you. It was quiet. It was safe. It was, I thought, exactly the life I'd built on purpose brick by brick year by year. I want you to really sit with how normal that morning felt because the contrast is going to matter later. It was early autumn, that particular kind of crisp morning where the air smells like it's been rinsed clean overnight. I was leaning against the kitchen counter with both hands wrapped around my coffee mug, when Russell came up behind me and hooked his arms around my waist. His chin found the top of my shoulder. "You're still doing the hike today, right?" he asked. And there was something in his voice, a little too much brightness, a little too rehearsed, that I noticed and then immediately talked myself out of noticing. "Wouldn't miss it," I told him. "Sky's perfect for it. You should try Carson Ridge," he said, already reaching for the coffee pot like this was just idle chatter. "I heard the view up there is unreal after all that rain yesterday." Here's the thing about Russell, hiking was my thing, not his. He tolerated it. He never researched trails for me. So some small quiet part of my brain flagged it as odd. But you know how it is when you love someone. You don't interrogate the people you trust. You just smile and say, "Good idea, babe." And you grab your boots. An hour later I was standing at the trailhead, breathing in pine and wet earth, feeling that specific kind of peace you only get from being somewhere far from your phone. The higher I climbed, the more I noticed the trail had turned against me. The previous day's rain had transformed entire stretches into a slick, reddish clay that sucked at my boots. I remember consciously thinking, be careful here. I made it to an overlook where the trail pinched down to almost nothing, hugging a drop that had to be 100 feet straight into a creek bed. I stopped there to catch my breath and take in the valley. That was the last calm moment of my old life. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to lose everything I thought I had. I turned to keep moving down the trail, and the ground just vanished from under me. I want to be precise about this because it matters. It wasn't a normal slip. It felt like something gave way beneath my foot, like the earth itself had decided to betray me. There was this horrifying half-second of total weightlessness, and then pure animal terror as the whole world tilted into a smear of green and brown. I don't remember the fall as a sequence of events. I remember it in flashes, the way a nightmare leaves fragments behind. A branch cracking under my shoulder and buying me half a second of mercy, pain exploding through my collarbone, and then the shock of ice water swallowing me whole, the current dragging me under before I could even scream. That's where my memory just stops. I don't know how long the creek carried me, or how long I lay unconscious on some rocky bank before my body simply decided to keep breathing without my permission. Could have been hours. Could have been days. The next thing I became aware of was the smell of wood smoke and simmering beef stew. My skull was throbbing like someone had taken a mallet to it, and every inch of my body felt like one enormous deep tissue bruise. A woman's face slowly resolved into focus above me, soft, deeply lined, kind in a way that felt like it had earned every wrinkle. "Well, look who finally decided to rejoin the living," she said, her voice warm and gravel rough. "Easy now. Don't rush it." Where am I? My throat felt like sandpaper. "You're safe, honey. My name's Mavis. My husband found you down by the creek a few days back. You were about as close to gone as a person can get and still come back." I was alive, but lying in that stranger's bed with no ID, no phone, and a brain so scrambled I could barely hold onto my own name for more than a few seconds at a time. I had absolutely no idea that back in the world I'd left behind, they had already put me in the ground. Let me tell you, the weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my entire life. Mavis nursed me back from the edge with stews, bitter herbal teas, and a patience I didn't deserve and desperately needed. Her cabin sat miles deep in the woods, small and worn and completely off the grid. A genuine sanctuary. But it was also in its own way a cage because I had no phone, no car, no way to reach a single soul who knew me. My memory limped back to me in pieces, like somebody handed me a shattered mirror and told me to reassemble my own face. First my name surfaced, Loretta, then Russell, then the house. Then my sister, Delia. I'd sit for hours at the window just staring at the pines. This low simmering frustration building in my chest because my body was slowly healing while my mind stayed cracked open. I tried standing on my own one afternoon and my legs folded like wet paper, dropping me straight to the floor. I didn't cry from the pain. I cried because I felt so utterly powerless, so completely erased from my own life. Eventually, and I mean it took real grinding weeks, I could sit upright for longer than an hour without the room spinning. My head started to clear. And one ordinary afternoon, Mavis was wiping dust off an ancient beige desktop computer tucked in the corner of her living room. "We don't get much internet out here," she told me. "Slower than molasses in January, but it does work. Might be worth trying to track down your people." My heart nearly stopped. The internet. Hope and dread hit me at the exact same time, this sick cocktail of feeling that I still remember in my body. I sat down at that ancient keyboard, the plastic gone yellow with age, and listened to the machine groan and whine its way onto the web. My hands were shaking so badly I had to type my own name twice. Loretta Hayes. The first result loaded, and the headline hit me like a fist to the sternum. Local realtor Loretta Hayes missing, presumed dead after hiking accident. Presumed dead. I read those two words over and over until they stopped meaning anything. The article quoted a devastated Russell, grieving publicly, talking about unbearable loss. It mentioned a memorial service. A funeral. My husband had held a funeral. For me. I felt the floor tilt beneath me all over again. Except this time there was no mountain involved. I kept scrolling, saw photos of myself, read about search parties that had eventually been called off. And then I found the article that changed absolutely everything. It was from some local lifestyle blog, posted just a few weeks earlier, and the headline alone made my stomach drop before I even opened it. A new beginning. Russell Hayes finds love after tragedy. I clicked it with hands that had gone completely numb. There he was. My husband. Smiling. His arm wrapped around my own sister, Delia, who was beaming straight into the camera, holding up her left hand to show off a diamond that had absolutely no business being on her finger. The article gushed about how the two of them had found comfort in shared grief. It announced their engagement. 3 months after I disappeared. 3 months. I hadn't even been gone a full season and they were already engaged. I realized distantly that I was still gripping the ceramic mug Mavis had handed me, until it slipped straight through my numb fingers and shattered on the floorboards, and honestly, that sound was the perfect soundtrack for exactly what was happening to my entire world in that moment. Mavis came rushing in. "Loretta? Sweetheart, what happened?" I couldn't get words out. I just pointed a shaking finger at the screen. She leaned over my shoulder, scanned the article, and I heard her breath catch. "Lord have mercy," she whispered. "That's not right. That's not right at all." Not right didn't even begin to cover it. This was a betrayal on a scale I didn't have language for yet. As Mavis knelt down to help me sweep up the broken mug, one cold, crystal-clear thought locked into place in my mind, and it had nothing to do with getting home anymore. I looked up at her. "Mavis," I said, and my voice came out barely above a whisper, but there was something new underneath it, something hard and absolutely certain. "I'm going to crash a wedding." Now here's where the story really starts to turn, so stay with me. A few days later, I talked Mavis's grandson, a quiet teenager with a truck that had definitely seen better decades, into driving me into town. I needed to see it with my own 2 eyes before I let myself believe any of it. We parked across the street from my house. Our house. It looked exactly the same. Same porch light, same mailbox. It just felt like it belonged to strangers now. We didn't wait long. The front door opened and out walked Russell and Delia, hand in hand, laughing about something I'd never get to know. He leaned down and kissed her, not some tentative, comforting, grief-stricken kiss, but the easy, practiced kiss of two people who'd been doing this for a very long time. My stomach turned over completely. I knew right then I couldn't just march up and start pounding on the door. I needed a plan. I needed people in my corner. And I already had my first phone call picked out. I had the grandson drop me at a gas station where I paid cash for a cheap burner phone. My hands were trembling as I dialed a number I'd known by heart since we were kids. It rang twice. "Hello. Brenda. Don't hang up. It's Loretta." Dead silence. Then sharp and annoyed. "This isn't funny. Who is this?" I had to prove it was really me. "When we were 16, I said, my voice cracking, "you snuck out with me to see that terrible punk band, the Misfits. You wore my denim jacket because if your parents caught you, you'd have been grounded until college. We told them it was a school movie night." More silence. Then a choked, disbelieving sob. "Oh my God. Loretta? Where are you?" "I can't say yet, Bren. But I need something from you, and I need total honesty." I took a breath that felt like it scraped the inside of my chest. "How long were they together? Before my accident? I need the real answer." The sharp intake of air on her end told me everything before she even spoke. Loretta, I don't know for certain. There were whispers. Rumors. I never wanted to believe any of it. How long, Brenda? She let out this long, guilty sigh. I saw them together myself. At the Blue Room downtown. About 8 months before your accident. 8 months. My whole chest caved in. 8 months before I fell off that mountain. While I was planning our anniversary trip. While I was scheduling closings and picking out throw pillows for our future. My husband and my own sister were sneaking off together behind my back. They never saw me, Brenda kept going, words tumbling out now. I wanted to tell you, Loretta, I swear I did. But I had no proof. I confronted Delia about it later and she laughed it off, swore it was a one-time mistake, begged me not to blow up your marriage over it. 8 months. The number just kept looping in my head. While I was trying to build us a future, they were already building one of their own, one that didn't include me. Loretta, Brenda said, and I could hear the fear creeping into her voice now. What are you going to do? Through the windshield, I watched Delia pull out of my driveway in my car. The one Russell had probably told everyone he'd sold. Wearing my favorite cashmere sweater like it had always belonged to her. Something inside me went ice cold and completely still. I'm going to let them have their perfect little wedding, I said. Let them send the invitations. Pick the flowers. Choose the cake. Let them believe, all the way up until the last possible second, that they got away with it. And then, Brenda whispered. And then I'm going to walk into that church, I said, and give them exactly what they've earned. I hung up before she could argue, because at that point this wasn't about jealousy anymore. It wasn't even really about revenge. It had become, in the clearest possible way, about justice. If you're still with me, drop a 1 in the comments right now. It genuinely helps me know you're locked in, and trust me, this story is only getting darker from here. Going back to Mavis's cabin felt entirely different after that call. It stopped being just a place to heal and became something closer to a war room. Night after night I sat at her little kitchen table making lists, straining to recall old passwords and account numbers, anything at all that might become useful. Mavis would set down a fresh cup of tea beside me without a word, her eyes full of quiet worry. Be careful, dear, she told me one night. Revenge can eat a person alive if you let it. I looked up at her. I'm not letting it eat me, Mavis, I said. I'm letting it fuel me. There's a real difference. And there was, because to actually get the justice I was after, I needed more than one angry phone call. Brenda's confession was the spark, but I needed someone who'd actually been there. In the room, watching everything unfold after I supposedly died. I needed to talk to Garrett. Garrett had been Russell's closest friend since their college days, and he'd stood up as best man at our wedding. He was a decent enough guy at his core, but weak-willed, always carrying around a little more guilt than he let on. And he'd always had a soft spot for me, which meant I knew exactly which lever to pull. First though, I needed to disappear a little. Mavis helped me dye my hair a deep brown right there in her kitchen sink. Cheap drugstore dye staining the porcelain a faint pink. I bought thick, ugly non-prescription glasses and started wearing shapeless, forgettable clothes. It's a strange, hollow feeling trying to make yourself invisible in a town where you used to know practically everyone by name. I found Garrett exactly where I expected, the corner booth at Jimmy's Bar and Grill, nursing a beer after his shift. My heart was slamming against my ribs as I slid into the seat across from him. Hello, Garrett. His beer stopped dead halfway to his mouth. Every ounce of color drained out of his face like someone had pulled a plug. Jesus Christ, he breathed. Loretta. Keep your voice down, I said, glancing around the room. We need to talk. But they said you were. Yeah, not so much. I leaned in. Tell me everything, Garrett. Everything. How long did you know? I pressed. He set his beer down with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking, staring at the table instead of me. I swear to you, Loretta, I didn't know anything for certain before the accident. Russell told me something had happened between them, but he swore it was over. Told me that a full year before you went missing. Said it was a mistake, that he'd ended it clean. And you believed him. I believed him, Garrett admitted miserably. God help me, I believed him. And after I was gone? He finally lifted his eyes to mine, and they were full of shame. It was like they stopped even trying to hide it. I confronted him once, told him to have some decency, to respect your memory at least a little. He just brushed me off. But you never told anyone else. I should have, he mumbled. I'm sorry, Loretta. I really am. A waitress drifted by and I pulled my cap lower, ordering a whiskey neat. Something told me I was going to need it before this conversation was over. And I had no idea just how right I was. After she left, Garrett leaned in close, his voice dropping almost to nothing. There's more, he said. About the house. About your money. My stomach clenched into a fist. What about it? Russell used your entire life insurance payout to clear off his gambling debts. The words landed like a physical blow. Gambling debts. I'd been married to that man for years and never once knew he had any. And now, Garrett went on, disgust thick in his voice. Him and Delia are burning through whatever's left on this ridiculous, over-the-top wedding. It's your money, Loretta. They're literally funding their new life on the back of your death. My whiskey arrived and I threw it back in a single burning gulp, grateful for anything that could distract me from the acid rising in my throat. Show me proof, I demanded. Garrett pulled out his phone with visibly shaking hands. Screenshots of bank statements he'd somehow gotten hold of, text threads he'd been accidentally looped into. Their entire betrayal laid out in cold, undeniable pixels. They were even planning to launch a real estate development company using what was left of my money. And my mother? I asked, dreading the answer before it even came. Is she seriously okay with any of this? Garrett's face said everything before he even opened his mouth. Judith? She's been right there helping them plan the whole thing. Keep saying it's what you would have wanted, for the two of them to find happiness. That one hurt in a completely different, deeper way. My own mother choosing them over me even in death. I stood up so fast my chair scraped hard against the floor. Needing air, needing to be anywhere else. But Garrett grabbed my wrist. His grip stronger than I expected. His face gone pale as chalk. Wait, he said. Loretta, there's something else. Something you really need to hear. I froze. Cold crawled slowly up my spine. What? It's about the day you went hiking. My heart just stopped. What about it? He swallowed hard, eyes darting around the bar like he was terrified of being overheard. Russell knew that trail. Knew exactly how dangerous it turned after heavy rain. We talked about it a few weeks earlier, after a buddy of ours slipped up there and broke his ankle. The air went to ice in my lungs. My mind flashed straight back to that morning. Russell unusually cheerful, pushing so hard for that specific route. You should take Carson Ridge. Views incredible after the rain. He's the one who told you to go there that morning, isn't he? Garrett whispered, and the accusation hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. If your jaw just dropped, drop a 2 down in the comments, because this is exactly where I found out this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was something so much darker. The implication crashed over me in one nauseating wave. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just theft. Had my accident actually been engineered? Do you have proof of that too? My voice came out flat and dangerously quiet. Garrett nodded slowly, fear and grim certainty mixing in his expression. He texted me that morning, asking if I thought the trail would be slick enough. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Figured he was just being cautious. But later, Delia texted him back. And I think he accidentally CC'd me on the whole thread. My entire body locked rigid. Send it. Send me everything you have. Every screenshot, every statement. All of it. Loretta, he said, watching me with real worry. What are you going to do with all this? I managed something that resembled a smile, though there wasn't a shred of warmth left in it. I'm going to give them the wedding day they truly deserve. I stepped out into a light, cold drizzle, my thoughts spinning at 100 miles an hour. If Russell had genuinely, knowingly sent me up that trail understanding exactly how treacherous it was, then this wasn't just betrayal. This was attempted murder. My phone buzzed. A new message. Garrett had already sent the files. I ducked under the awning of a shuttered storefront and opened the first image with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. A screenshot. A text thread. My blood turned to ice as I read it. Russell, trail should be slick enough after the rain. Russell. Make sure she goes alone, Delia. Are you sure about this? Russell. It's the only way we can be together. Trust me. I had to lean my full weight against the cold brick wall just to stay upright. My knees genuinely buckled. They hadn't just betrayed me. They hadn't just stolen from me. They had tried to kill me, for money, and so they could be together without a single soul judging them for it. I closed the messages and let this terrifying glass-smooth calm settle over the shock. The old Loretta, trusting, naive, the wife who never once thought to check her husband's phone. She had genuinely died on that mountain. The woman standing in the rain now, holding proof of her own attempted murder, was someone else entirely. And she was about to teach both of them that karma, when it finally shows up, aims with absolutely perfect precision. My next move was pulling my allies together in one room. I arranged to meet Brenda at a quiet coffee shop 2 towns over, somewhere nobody would recognize either of us. The second she saw me, she burst into tears and squeezed me so hard I could barely breathe. I can't believe you're actually here, she sobbed. I thought I was losing my mind after that phone call. I'm sorry for going dark on you, Bren, I said, steering her toward a corner booth. I needed time to gather everything. I pulled up the messages from Garrett and watched her hand fly to her mouth as she read them. Oh my God, she whispered, horror written across her face. Loretta, they planned it. They actually planned it. Looks that way, I said grimly. But I need more than this. Before she could answer, a man in a dark suit walked up to our table and my heart nearly stopped, until I noticed Brenda relax. Loretta, she said carefully, this is Detective Miller. He's been quietly investigating your case this whole time. I tensed instantly. Brenda, please tell me you didn't. It's all right, the detective said, his voice steady and calm as he slid into the booth beside us. Your secret is completely safe with me. Honestly, Ms. Hayes, something about your husband and sister never sat right with me from day one. The engagement timeline, the insurance payout moving that fast, none of it added up. I just never had the proof to move on it. Until now. He set a small recorder on the table. I'd like to hear your whole story if you're willing to give it. So I told him everything start to finish, the fall, the creek, waking up at Mavis's, the engagement article, all of it. When I reached the part about my mother helping them plan the wedding, Brenda reached over and took my hand. There's something else you need to know, she said quietly. About your mother. That she's been helping them? I already know. It's worse than that, Brenda said, glancing at the detective, who gave a small grave nod. She's been helping them sell off your things. Your jewelry. Your art. Everything you inherited from Grandma Rose. The coffee cup in my hand cracked audibly under how hard I was gripping it. Legally, Detective Miller explained, without a death certificate ever being issued, those sales could absolutely be considered theft. We've had our eye on Russell's finances for a while now, insurance fraud at the very least. And now with everything you've just told us, attempted murder. He slid a folder across the table. There's something else. We found something interesting when we dug into your grandmother's estate. My head snapped up. What about it? The version filed with the court isn't the original document, he said gravely. We found the real will in your grandmother's safety deposit box. He laid both documents side by side, and the difference hit me like a second betrayal stacked right on top of the first. The genuine will left her entire estate to me alone. The forged version, the one filed with the court, split everything evenly between me and Delia. How? I whispered, staring at my own mother's forged signature. Your mother held power of attorney after your grandmother's stroke, Miller said quietly. She made the switch before it was ever filed. My own mother. She had stolen a piece of my inheritance outright, and now she was actively helping my husband and sister liquidate assets that technically belonged entirely to me. It wasn't just a betrayal anymore. It was a full conspiracy. A web of lies and greed spun by three of the people I should have trusted most in the entire world. Right then Brenda's phone buzzed. Her face went white as she looked at the screen. You need to see this, she said, voice trembling. It was a social media post from Delia. A photo of her in a bridal shop, wearing what I instantly recognized as my grandmother's vintage wedding gown. The dress that was supposed to be mine. The caption read, "Final fitting done. Honoring my sister's memory by wearing her dream dress on my big day. Wedding countdown, our love wins." And then Brenda delivered one more blow I genuinely wasn't braced for. I overheard her talking to your mom yesterday, she said. She's planning to announce something at the wedding. That they're expecting. The room actually seemed to spin. What? She's 3 months pregnant. 3 months. The timeline landed in my chest like a stone. They'd conceived a child while I was fighting for my life in a stranger's cabin, all while planning their dream wedding on my dime. I want to destroy them, I said quietly, my voice shaking with something that wasn't quite anger anymore, something colder. Not just legally. I want them to feel exactly what I felt. Detective Miller studied me with a grim understanding. We already have enough to make arrests today, he said. But if you want maximum impact, the wedding, he paused. Let them have their perfect day. Then take everything away from them at once. It was an enormous risk, but it was the only path to the kind of justice I actually needed. If you're still here, comment 3. Because what happens next at the rehearsal is where things get almost unbearably tense. That evening, I let myself into my childhood home using a spare key I knew was still hidden under a loose brick by the back door. The place felt like a museum built by strangers. Photos of Russell and Delia lined every surface where photos of me used to be. I sat down at the darkened kitchen table and waited. An hour later, the door opened and my mother, Judith, walked in humming to herself. She flipped the light switch, and the humming died in her throat instantly. Her hand flew to her chest, purse dropping to the floor with a heavy thud. Jesus, she gasped. Loretta, you cannot keep doing that to me. Sit down, Mother, I said flatly. We need to talk about Grandma Rose's will. Her face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about. I slapped both documents onto the table between us. The real one and the forgery. Want to explain this? She stared down at the papers, her composure cracking visibly. Where did you get those? Doesn't matter where. What matters is what happens next. I slid the authentic will toward her. You're going to help me, or I'm walking straight into the district attorney's office, and you will spend the rest of your life in prison. You wouldn't, she stammered. I'm your mother. And Delia is my sister, I shot back. That never stopped either of you from trying to have me killed and stealing my entire life. I didn't know about that part, she cried, collapsing into a chair. I swear it, Loretta. I only found out after they told everyone you were dead. Russell seemed so broken up and Delia was there for him and I actually thought it was fate. I laughed and it came out ugly and bitter. Fate? Mother, they planned my death. And you helped them profit off it. You helped plan the wedding. You helped sell my things. All while knowing exactly what they'd done. She started sobbing, real heaving sobs, and I felt absolutely nothing. No sympathy. No pity. Just cold, clean resolve. Here's what happens now, I continued. You keep planning this wedding. You make it flawless. Spare no expense. It's my money paying for it anyway, isn't it? And in return, when it all comes down, you'll be standing on the right side of it. What are you going to do? She whispered through her tears. I'm going to give my dear sister the wedding she's earned, I said, and stood to leave. The only question left is which side you're going to be standing on when it happens. She stared down at the two wills, clearly weighing her options, her survival instinct finally winning out over whatever twisted loyalty she still had to Delia. She looked up at me, tear-streaked and afraid. What do you need me to do? First, I said, get me copies of every financial document connected to this wedding, every vendor contract, every receipt. Then I want the guest list, the seating chart, the full schedule, every planned speech. All of it. And if I do all that? Then maybe, I said, already walking away, you don't spend your retirement in a prison cell. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I heard her pick up the phone behind me, her voice already miraculously composed. Delia, darling? It's Mom. I've had the most wonderful idea for your entrance. The trap was fully set. Every piece was finally sliding into place. The wedding rehearsal was already underway when I slipped up into the church's choir loft, Brenda close behind me. From our hidden perch, I watched this grotesque little parody of my own life play out below. No, Delia, darling, my mother called out, her voice carrying through the cavernous space. Pause a beat longer at the third pew. That's where the photographers get the best angle. Delia, wearing a sundress already straining against her growing belly, practiced the walk again. Russell stood at the altar beaming at her with the exact expression he used to save just for me. Watching it made me physically nauseous. They both look nervous, Brenda whispered, passing me a pair of binoculars. Delia especially. Good, I said, adjusting the focus. My phone buzzed. Detective Miller. FBI team in position. Accounts flagged. Ready whenever you are. Down below, Delia and my mother were locked in a heated, whispered argument. I caught fragments. I can't do this, Mom. Don't be ridiculous. Wearing Loretta's dress, what if? Russell stepped in, wrapping an arm around Delia. Babe, we already talked about this. It's what Loretta would have wanted. I nearly laughed out loud right there in the choir loft. Instead, I texted Garrett a single word now. Right on cue, Garrett burst through the main doors looking appropriately frantic. Russell, we've got a problem. The permits for the development. The bank's threatening to pull funding. We need to deal with this today, or the whole thing falls apart. Fine, Russell muttered, kissing Delia's cheek before hurrying off with Garrett. I'll handle it. Finish up here. The second they were gone, Delia sank into a pew, head in her hands. My mother patted her shoulder awkwardly. I'll get you some water, she said and hurried off. That was my window. Stay put, I whispered to Brenda, and slipped down the back stairwell into the shadows of the sanctuary's stone pillars. Delia was alone now, muttering to herself. This is wrong. This is all wrong. Having second thoughts, sister dear? My voice echoed slightly off the stone. She spun around, eyes wide with pure terror. Who's there? Just your conscience, I said, still hidden. Telling you exactly what you already know. Karma's coming. Loretta. Her voice cracked apart. That's not possible. Isn't it? About as impossible as sleeping with my husband, as helping plan my accident. No, you're dead. This isn't real. I stepped fully into a shaft of colored light spilling from the stained glass. Her face went completely ashen. She stumbled backward, one hand flying up to make the sign of the cross. You're not real. You're not real. Oh, I'm very real, I said, moving toward her slowly. And so is every piece of evidence about what you and Russell did. Every text. Every secret meeting. Every dollar you stole. Please, she whimpered, hands flying protectively to her stomach. I'm sorry. We can fix this. Fix this? Like you fixed my brakes before pushing that hiking trail on me. Her eyes went huge with shock. That particular detail was a bluff on my part, one I'd invented on the spot, but her reaction confirmed something chilling all on its own. They really had considered other ways to get rid of me. That was Russell's idea, she sobbed. I tried to stop him, I swear. Those texts say otherwise, I said, closing the last of the distance between us. But don't worry. I'm not here to hurt you. I leaned in close, voice dropping to almost nothing. I'm here to promise you something. What? She whimpered. The perfect wedding day. Exactly the one you deserve. I gave her a smile that made her flinch back like I'd struck her, and then I melted back into the shadows just as my mother returned with a glass of water. Delia was already hyperventilating. Mom, I saw her. Loretta's alive. She was right here. Don't be ridiculous, my mother said, though I could see her hands were shaking. You're just nervous. From up in the balcony, I watched my mother lead my hysterical weeping sister away. My phone buzzed again. Miller. Russell took the bait, moving money right now. Perfect. Let him keep digging his own grave. The night before the wedding, I sat in the guest room at Brenda's place, the air thick with anticipation. My grandmother's jewelry box sat open on the bed, one of the few pieces my mother had apparently forgotten to sell off. Brenda came in with 2 glasses of wine. Everything's in place, she said. Miller's got teams at every exit. Garrett planted the doctored financial documents in Russell's office for the FBI to find on their own. Even your mother came through with the seating chart changes. She hesitated, swirling her wine. Are you sure about this, Loretta? This is going to destroy them. Completely. I lifted my grandmother's sapphire ring out of the box, the one I was always supposed to wear on my own wedding day. They tried to kill me, Brenda, I said quietly. They stole my money, my life, my future. Tomorrow they get to know exactly how that feels. My phone rang. Delia's name lit up the screen. We both froze. Answer it, Brenda urged. Find out what she wants. I put it on speaker. Hello, sister. Loretta, she slurred, voice thick with wine and tears. I knew it was you in the church. I'm not losing my mind. Pre-wedding jitters? I asked coldly. Please, she started crying. Don't do this. Whatever you're planning for tomorrow, just don't. Why shouldn't I? Because I'm pregnant, she sobbed. Please, Loretta, think about your niece. Or nephew. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles went white. You mean the baby you conceived with my husband while everyone thought I was dead? The one you're planning to raise on my stolen inheritance? I love him, Loretta. We never meant for any of this to hurt you. Really? Because those texts about the hiking trail say otherwise. A long silence. Then barely a whisper. That was Russell's idea. He said it would look like an accident. That we could finally be together without anyone judging us. I was weak. I was so stupid, and I've been paying for it every single day since. I see you everywhere, Loretta. In my dreams. In mirrors. I can't escape what we did. Good, I said, twisting my grandmother's ring around my finger. Then tomorrow should feel very familiar. I hung up while she was still pleading. She sounded terrified, Brenda said, watching me carefully. She should be, I replied, walking over to a garment bag hanging on the closet door. I unzipped it to reveal my grandmother's original wedding gown, the true one. Brenda gasped. How did you even get that? Mavis's granddaughter works at the dry cleaner, I explained, running my fingers over the vintage lace. She swapped the dresses out last week. Delia's going to wake up tomorrow morning and find her altered version gone. And this one, I said, isn't going to fit her at all. My phone buzzed again. Miller. Russell just tried to empty every account. Everything's frozen. He's starting to panic. Then Garrett. He's drinking hard at Jimmy's, talking about running. Should we stop him? Brenda asked. No, I said, a grim smile forming. Let him show up tomorrow hungover. It'll make everything so much better. A knock at the door made us both jump. My mother, Judith, looking positively haunted. Delia's hysterical, she said, letting herself in without waiting for an invitation. She's threatening to call the whole thing off. That would be a problem, I said coolly, because if she does, we lose our shot. The FBI needs them actually attempting those frozen accounts tomorrow to prove intent. I locked eyes with her. Don't worry. Her pride won't let her do anything but show up. Loretta, please, she begged. Show some mercy. I pulled out my phone and played her the recording of Russell and Delia discussing my accident, the one Garrett had handed over. Her face went pale as chalk with every single word. When it ended, she sank down onto the bed. I didn't know, she whispered. I never imagined. Now you do, I said. And tomorrow so will everybody else. I walked her to the door. 10 a.m. sharp at the church. Wear something festive. It's your daughter's wedding day after all. After she left, I shut off my phone completely. The stage was set. I needed to be rested for what was coming. If you're feeling that tension right now, comment for. Because the wedding day itself is where everything finally completely comes apart. The church bells struck noon, and pure chaos was already erupting inside the bridal suite. I watched through a narrow crack in the door I deliberately propped open, my heart beating in this slow, steady drumbeat of anticipation. This isn't my dress. Delia's scream tore down the marble hallway. She was holding up the original, untouched wedding gown, exactly as I'd planned. That's impossible, my mother said, playing her role beautifully. We had it altered just last week. I can't wear this, it won't even close over my hips. I'm pregnant, for God's sake, she shrieked, loud enough that several guests walking past stopped and stared wide-eyed. Her pregnancy wasn't supposed to be public knowledge yet. That was the very first crack spreading across their perfect facade. The wedding coordinator rushed by, hissing into her headset. 15 minutes to ceremony. I slipped away from the door and made my way behind the massive church organ, tucked into shadow and heavy velvet curtains. Guests filed in, a sea of pastels and dark suits, all quietly murmuring about the commotion they'd overheard. Russell stood at the altar, swaying slightly, pale and sweaty and unmistakably hungover, Garrett gripping his arm to keep him upright while playing the supportive best man to perfection. The music began. The heavy wooden doors at the back swung open, and the entire congregation rose out of pure reflex. Delia started her walk down the aisle, except she was wearing a hastily located backup gown, a plain white sheath that did absolutely nothing to hide her condition. She wasn't glowing. She looked terrified, eyes darting into every corner like she expected to see a ghost step out at any second. She reached the altar. The priest launched into his speech about love and honor and holy matrimony. I found my mother's eyes across the church, and she gave me the smallest, most imperceptible nod. It was time. If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, the priest intoned, his voice ringing out through sudden total silence, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The silence stretched. 1 beat, 2, 3. Then I stepped out from behind the organ. My heels cracked against the marble floor, sharp and impossibly loud in that stunned quiet. Every single head in the church whipped toward me. A collective gasp rippled through the pews like wind through wheat. Russell staggered backward, his jaw going slack with disbelief. Delia's bouquet slipped from her fingers, flowers scattering across the marble. I walked slowly down the center aisle, a faint smile on my lips, savoring every stunned face I passed. Okay, quick pause because I need every one of you watching to comment the number 1 right now if you're still with me. It genuinely tells me you're here, and I promise you this next part is worth every second you've spent getting here. Sorry I'm late, I said, my voice clear and steady, carrying easily through the dead silence. Traffic was murder. This isn't possible, Russell slurred. One shaking finger pointed at me like he could ward me off. You're dead. We made. He caught himself. Too late. His own accidental confession hung in the air, damning him completely in front of every single guest. You made sure. I repeated, arching an eyebrow as I reached the front of the church. The same way you made sure that trail was slick after the rain? The same way you made sure I went up there alone. Loretta, please, Delia whispered, sinking to her knees, mascara running in dark streaks. Not here. Why not here? My voice rose. It's my church too, Delia. My grandmother's dress you tried to steal. My money paying for every flower in this room. I swept a hand toward the extravagant arrangements, the stunned faces. And my husband, I said, turning to lock eyes with Russell, the one you're trying to marry. Right on cue, the main door swung open again. Detective Miller strode in, flanked by 2 uniformed officers and 2 FBI agents in dark suits. Speaking of money, I continued, my voice ringing with authority now, Russell, want to explain to everyone how you've been spending my life insurance payout? Or should we let the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit handle that part for you? Panic flooded his face. He bolted for the side exit, but the agents were faster, tackling him before he made it halfway, cuffing him as he cursed and thrashed against the floor. And Delia, I said, turning to my sister, now a crumpled heap in her stolen dress. Should we go ahead and tell everyone about the text messages? About how you helped plan my accident? I never meant, she sobbed. Show them. I called up to Brenda in the choir loft. The massive screen set up for wedding photos flickered to life. Instead of smiling engagement pictures, their own words appeared in giant, damning white text across the screen for the entire congregation to read. Trail should be slick enough. Make sure she goes alone. Are you sure about this? It's the only way we can be together. Trust me. The room erupted, gasps turning fast into shouts of pure outrage. My mother stood, visibly panicking now. Loretta, that's enough. Enough? Like how forging Grandma's will to steal my inheritance was enough. I turned to her. Don't worry, Mother. The FBI has plenty of questions for you too. Two officers moved toward her, and she fainted dead away into the pew behind her. Delia vomited into a decorative potted plant nearby. The whole scene was honestly a beautiful, glorious disaster. You see, I said, turning to address the stunned crowd, letting every ounce of righteous fury I'd been holding back finally out into the open. This was supposed to be my happy ending. My husband. My house. My family. Instead, they tried to kill me for it. The agents marched a handcuffed Russell back up the aisle past me. We can explain, he shouted desperately. Oh, you'll have plenty of time to explain, I said calmly. To the FBI. To the DA. To a jury. I walked to the collection plate by the door where the agents were holding him, and slid my grandmother's sapphire ring off my finger. Remember how you always told me I was too trusting? Too naive. I looked him dead in the eye. Turns out I learned everything I know about betrayal from the very best. I dropped the ring into the brass plate. It landed with a soft, quiet clink. Call it a donation, I told the priest, who was staring at me completely dumbfounded. God knows the two of them are going to need every prayer they can get. As Russell and Delia were dragged out, sobbing and cursing in equal measure, Brenda appeared at my side. Was it worth it? She asked softly. I watched the police cars pull away, sirens starting to wail, reporters who'd clearly been tipped off already flooding in with cameras flashing. I glanced at the toppled wedding cake lying on its side. Somehow the perfect metaphor for the entire day. They tried to steal my life, I said, straightening my jacket. I'd say this was exactly what they earned. Now for the ending, because trust me, you're going to want to hear how this actually settled. Months later, the courthouse steps were packed with reporters as Russell and Delia were let out in handcuffs after sentencing. I watched from across the street, sipping coffee with Brenda and Detective Miller. 15 years each, Miller said, taking a sip of his own coffee. Plus full restitution of every stolen asset. The DA said it was one of the easiest convictions of her career. Especially once Russell started trying to pin everything on Delia during the trial. I watched my sister stumble down the steps, her belly far more visible now. Prison uniforms doing absolutely nothing to flatter anyone. She was being transferred to a facility with a maternity ward. I won't pretend the thought of that baby, my niece or nephew, being born behind bars didn't sit heavy on me. I tried not to dwell on it too long. And my mother? I asked. House arrest and supervised probation given her age and health, Miller said, checking his notes. She had to sell her house just to pay back the estate she defrauded. Your full inheritance has already been restored. He handed me an envelope. That's everything they stole, plus interest and civil penalties, straight from the FBI's final accounting. The number inside made me blink twice. I was suddenly a genuinely wealthy woman. But strangely, the money felt like the least important part of any of it. Garrett jogged up just then, phone already in hand. He testified against Russell and was quietly trying to rebuild his own life piece by piece. You need to see this, he said, handing it over. My mother, looking frail and gray, was giving a televised interview from her living room couch. I failed both my daughters, she was saying, voice weak and thin. I chose the wrong side. Believed the wrong stories. If Loretta never forgives me, I understand completely. Turn it off, I said, handing the phone back. I'd already heard every apology I needed to hear. Have you heard from Delia? Brenda asked gently. Just letters. Sorry over and over. She wants to see me. And... No, I said firmly, watching the last police car disappear around the corner. She lost that right the moment she helped plan my murder. Some things just don't earn forgiveness. I stood up, restless in a way I hadn't expected. The rage that had powered me through every single one of these months had finally cooled, leaving behind this strange, hollow kind of quiet. I'm tired, I admitted. Tired of being angry all the time. Then stop, Brenda said, squeezing my hand. You got your life back, Loretta. Your money, your freedom. Don't let either of them take up one more square inch of space in your head. My phone buzzed. A text from Mavis, the woman who'd quite literally saved my life. Cabin's always open if you ever need some peace. Peace. What a foreign concept that had become. And suddenly I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I booked a ticket, I said, and for the first time in what felt like forever, a real smile broke across my face. To where? Brenda asked. New Zealand. That hiking trip I've always wanted to take. It felt fitting, somehow starting over somewhere famous for its beautiful, unforgiving trails. Reclaiming the very thing they'd once tried to use to end me. Are you running away? Garrett asked. No, I said, feeling something genuinely lift off my shoulders for the first time in months. I'm moving forward. They'll spend their years in prison. My mother will live out hers under house arrest. My money's exactly where it belongs. It's time I started writing my own story again. One without a single chapter dedicated to revenge. I looked down at my bare hand, having already retrieved my grandmother's sapphire ring from that church collection plate. It was never really about the ring or even the money. It was always about the truth. And now, finally, the truth was out in the open for good. I slipped the ring back onto my finger. It felt right again for the first time since that morning on Carson Ridge. As I walked away from that courthouse, leaving my friends and the ghosts of my old life behind me, I felt this profound, almost dizzying sense of freedom. Ahead of me, mountains still left to climb, trails still left to explore, and a life I'd finally reclaimed completely as my own. This time, nobody gets to write my ending except me. If this story hit you the way it hit me telling it, let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.